I'm Niall Satella. This is Black and Gray Cult, first episode featuring my buddy Michael Valdes. Super hyped, one of my favorite artists. He's done a couple really good pieces on me. We're going to start it off. So, how did you get into black and gray or tattooing in general?
Originally, I was into like just more color traditional stuff. So like when I was aspiring to tattoo, I wasn't really doing any black and gray at all. My mentor was doing like all this pepper shade, like prison style shit, you know? And so he kind of was like, all right, if you want to learn how to do tattooing, you need to learn how to draw with the ballpoint pen on a napkin or like a linen cloth, right? The way that pepper shading looked, I was like, that's fucking sick, you know? And so it was like my destiny to do black and gray, because the whole time, even when I was apprentice at Fine Line, I was like, I just want to do traditional, you know, all my paintings were color, traditional, flash and stuff like that. But he kind of was like, gave me these tasks as an apprentice to kind of learn how to do like this. That was just his way of teaching me. It was basically teaching me his way, you know? And then it's kind of like the South Park episode where Token can play bass just because he's black. So it's kind of has a little bit to do with me like being Chicano, I think, because immediately I was like doing pepper shading and like doing these like Chicano designs. It was like pretty good, you know? And like I got like a little bit of recognition from like a couple black and gray tattooers I really looked up to like pretty early on. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm good at this, you know? And so I started doing more, and like I started just getting better, like pretty fast with like, because once you figure out like the technique of the shading, whether it's like shading with a mag or doing pepper shading with just kind of that like technique, once you start figuring that out, it's like you can translate it to like, okay, I can make a fucking mountain lion, or I can make a rose or whatever, you know, a portrait. Once you kind of get the technique, you can apply it to a broad spectrum of styles or subject matter, you know? And so then I kind of like, you know, made like a demand for myself, I guess. And a lot of people were like asking for more realistic looking stuff, and most people that I work with are doing more color traditional, which is like what I wanted to do. But yeah, I mean, I didn't intend to go the black and gray route. That's just kind of where I ended up.
So, I guess kind of with any art, we're both musicians, so we talk about that. And we know with any other kind of creative thing, I don't want to call them rules, but there's like guidelines. Do you break the guidelines? Because sometimes you find gold or something by varying off the path. Is there something you feel like you do that's maybe your spin, or you're doing something that's a little off the path?
I'm trying to work on that a little bit, because I think a lot of what I do is just trying to meet or exceed my client's expectation. As far as like breaking the rules or like kind of going outside, whatever, I don't know if I necessarily do that, but I think I'm trying to do like, you know, my own thing, but also I'm a part of something that's a lot bigger than myself. But I mean, when it comes to tattooing, there's some rules that you can bend and others that you can't bend. And, you know, some that you can break, some you can't break. And where everyone is constantly pushing the envelope to like what is achievable and possible in tattooing. And ultimately what that means and what it should mean is like not what is ultimately achievable in a black and gray tattoo, like for my portfolio or like getting the photo, you know, because like now it's like everyone is viewing tattooing like on their phone screen versus like on their friend's arm, like, oh, who did that? You know what I mean? Or in person. And tattoos are not really meant to be viewed, like appreciated through a phone screen necessarily, because it's better to view a tattoo in person, especially now that we have a lot of black and gray tattooing that's like the photos are heavily edited and you're achieving these results as far as like the detail of the tattoo and everything. You're achieving these results for your photo and the portfolio under these certain lighting conditions, like because you're controlling all the variables of how people are viewing the tattoo. Like you're seeing this certain picture that you edited to look a certain way. You're not seeing it at the grocery store. You know what I mean? You're not taking a picture. So it's kind of distorting the public's expectation of what reality is. And I mean, like people can do whatever tattoos they want and get whatever tattoos they want, but what I think is a good tattoo is a tattoo that is going to age well and more or less look what you want it to look like in 10 to 20 years, you know? Because now that I've almost been tattooing for like 10 years, you see how tattoos age and what things really matter. And like a lot of times those really small details don't like really matter, you know? And like I really think what's important is like the overall composition and like the silhouette. Like I really don't like black and gray tattoos that people might be saying, "Oh, I'm pushing the envelope." I'm like, what's the word? I'm like, we're like, leading the industry in like this direction. We're cutting edge because we're doing something that is like making a photorealistic thing on skin or whatever for like our portfolios. But like, how well does it really hold up, and how good is it really going to look? You know what I mean? Like there was a reason that tattoos were kind of distilled down to their more simple values, because I think, and I don't really like when there's a tattoo that has to have like a blob of black all the way around it. Like, yeah, so it has the contrast, right? Like, I think that the outline, overall silhouette of what the tattoo looks like at a distance far away is really important as well. You know, so it's like sometimes like some rules are there for a reason, you know? And I mean, I definitely try to push my abilities and push what's possible and everything. But in my mind, I'm always thinking about like, how can I make this tattoo like still look good in the future, you know? And I'm constantly learning and constantly looking at tattoos and how they heal and all that to try to figure out the right formula of how to give people what they want, which is something that's kind of realistic and more lifelike, but that is going to hold up against the test of time, you know?
So, kind of like what I think is so interesting about black and gray, this is a little bit more about why I like it so much, is when I was a kid, I saw these people that had black and gray, and it's just so beautiful in its own way. And it's kind of like black and white movies. Like there's just this style to it that you just can't replicate with color.
There's something about black and gray, like a photo or black and gray film or something, because you're kind of capturing like the essence of something in life viewed through like a different kind of lens, you know? Like you can take a high fidelity full color photo of something, and you're like, I'll do the whole Android versus Apple thing. It's like the Android may have like a really good camera that has the most pixels and picks up all the detail and everything, but somehow iPhone camera just captures something with like more of like capturing like the feeling that we get when we're experiencing what we're seeing. Like not just seeing something as it is, but seeing something that is like you're mixing all the human emotion and human experience of observing and being a part of that thing, you know? And like old black and white photos, like most all the photos of old traditional tattoos and all that were all in black and white. So I kind of liked how that looked, you know, and like it kind of just has that same kind of thing, you know? Because tattooing used to be a subculture that kind of, that's how I got into it, because I kind of got into tattooing just before the internet and Instagram and all that really blew up. Before, it was like people that were into either like punk rock or skateboarding or extreme sports, like the Metal Militia guys were all super tattooed, you know, or like going to Ozfest, everyone was super tattooed. Most people in metal bands all have tattoos. So it was that kind of subculture all kind of went together. And a lot of people in tattooing, like that I'm friends with, kind of have the same kind of cultural background, you know? But now that it's kind of so mainstream, the taste in all things has kind of exploded and varied. So like some people only value tattooing that's like, oh my God, look how amazing this gorilla is. Like you can see every little detail in the hair. That is what places value on this because it's so lifelike and just so detailed. Whereas I'm the complete opposite of that. I loved tattooing because it was like a distilled down version of something in life, you know, that was like, so I mean, now like I feel like if you only like realistic style tattoos, maybe you're not a tattoo person.
It is interesting how, like you're saying, the punk rock, metal, skateboarding thing, it's all been there. And I think for you and me, we're similar age. I remember when I was a kid, tattoos were definitely more commonplace. But even in our time from being kids till now, the explosion is, yeah, it's insane. And I think for me, I remember seeing people that inspired me to get tattoos when I was a kid and held on to that. And maybe that's why I have certain tattoos the way I do now, is even though I grew up more in the explosion, so to speak, I held on to the older stuff.
Like something my client said yesterday, she just kind of started getting tattooed, and like she wanted something that was kind of detailed in black and gray, and like she had been getting these like kind of color tattoos from my clients or whatever. She asked them and they were like, hey, maybe this guy would be better, and so she's like, oh, I didn't really know like that different people are good at different things, and like now I feel confident because I'm going to someone who I know is going to give me like what I want. And so, I mean, I think that's great for tattooing because it's like people are going to ultimately get what they want. And like you were saying, like you can kind of judge someone like who they might be based on their tattoos. And kind of that's why we get them, is for a self-expression, to be like, I love this thing so much. This is so important to me. Like regardless of however dumb you think someone's idea might be, it's that important to them that they want to get it tattooed, usually. I mean, that being said, it all goes back down to taste. You know what I mean? Some people get butt rock tattoos that are like kind of like, oh man, it's like just like a kind of a whatever the trend is or whatever, that people want to get that. People joke about like the pocket watch rose and lion with a crown and blue eyes and all that sort of thing, I'm now like getting close to the 10-year mark. I've been coming back to my roots. Like I've been drawing like you said, like pencil on paper. That's kind of how I started drawing, was pencil on paper, and I was doing skulls and spider webs and shit like that and gravestones and doing the shading. And so that's my root. I haven't really been using my iPad very much. I'm just trying to draw on paper and make everything in my process for tattooing and art and everything just more analog, because that's kind of how I've been with guitar and all that. Like I obviously use this technology and the tools where it's going to help streamline and make everything efficient or whatever, but I'm keeping things just a little bit more pure because I feel like it's going to make my tattooing a little bit more pure. And because for me, it's been really easy to get swept away and everything that we see on our phone as far as tattooing and inspiration, like, oh, I want to try this and I want to try that and I want to do this tattoo and this kind of thing. And so I'm just kind of putting the blinders up a little bit more and trying to reference myself a little bit more. And also when you're tattooing the clients and they're like, they have as much access to all the tattoos on their phone. So they're like, I want this and that and this and that and this and that. And I'm kind of the guy that has the skill to provide that type of work for them. But I'm trying to just kind of go back to the roots and, keep it classic. Mechanics a lot of times are like ASE certified, where they have like this standard of labor too for like, let's say you're doing this valve adjustment job on this year Honda, and the book says that it should take you 3 hours to do that job. The difference with a tattoo is that like we're not doing the same job on the same car that's mechanically identical every time, So with and obviously with mechanics, there's really good mechanics and there's maybe some less good mechanics, and certain shops have less standards of like what certifications people have. Tattooing has been like a complete free-for-all, especially in the state of California up until like a few years ago, with AB 300 kind of basically they're just trying to put some standards of like how clean a tattoo shop should be and how it should run so that people that are getting tattoos are safe to get the tattoos. There's no standard whatsoever for tattooing as far as like your skill or anything like that. And I mean, so there's tattooers are not created equal. And a lot of times they'll charge pretty similar prices, and it's kind of up to the client to do their research, and so assume in a lot of professions that everyone should be standardized. And it's like, really, that's not the case at all. So do your homework, kids, As far as like, if you want to get a tattoo and not get AIDS, pretty much for the most part, everyone's on the same level. Some dudes are fucking lazy. So it's like, look at your guy's shit. It's like the tattoo shop bathroom look like it hasn't been cleaned for a week. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that kind of sums up what I wanted to talk about. I mean, we got some pretty good conversation about black and gray and just tattooing in general. Yeah. So thank you. This has been episode 1 of Black and Gray Cult with Niall Satella, and that was Michael Valdes.